The final step of the Intelli-G configuration process is function mapping. If you have your inputs calibrated correctly and you have selected the type of camera that you intend to use, this button here will become active, and once you click it, you'll have a screen similar to this one, depending on what type of controls you have calibrated. Now, for you to understand what controls we have here, I go to Edit Calibration, and you see here that we have two position switches which were set as momentary switches. We have a 3-position switch and a slider. Let's go back to mapping. First thing you need to learn is how to use a master control. A master control is the control that is responsible for selecting the function that you want to adjust at the respective moment. So this functionality helps you to set as many functions as you want with the use of only a few available channels on your RC. So in other words, you don't have to assign one control per each function. You can assign just a few controls to have full control over your camera. So in most of the cases you will want to use this feature, the use master feature. And once you have checked the master, you will get the possibility of specifying which of your channels is the master channel. And here we have several options. We can have a slider as a master channel. So I can choose this one here, which was this knob here. This means that if we choose this as a master channel, we will be able to cycle through the functions that we want to control by rotating this knob left and right. Let's select also a slave. I will explain the slave in a bit, but I wanted to select also a slave, so you see that once you have done so, you will be able to select any of the functions that are supported by your camera and assign them to these positions here. Because our master is a slider, we have the possibility of assigning 10 positions. It could be more, but we think that 10 positions it's enough. So let's say we have aperture on the first position, let's say we have shutter speed on the second and ISO on the third. This means that if I save this calibration as it is, this slider here will initially, the master will initially start on aperture, which is the first position, and if I would rotate this to the right, I would move to shutter speed. And if I rotate again to the right, move to ISO, and so on. Because the slave channel is this 3-position switch here, this will be the channel that we are going to use to adjust the value of the selected function. And to do so, you would have to put this 3-position switch into the middle, and every time you would go up or down, you would be adjusting the value of the selected function. So let's say we are on aperture, and this is the slave channel here. If we go down, we would adjust aperture down. If we go up, we would adjust aperture up. Now let's say that, let's uncheck this slave channel, and let's assume that our master channel is the 3-position switch here. Because, let me also select a slave. So we did it the other way around this time. So now the 3-position switch is the master and the slave is the slider. Because this is a 3-position switch, Intelli-G automatically assumes that you will have 3 functions set on this switch here. So let's again select aperture, shutter speed and ISO. So whenever I would switch this to a different position, the current function would change to the position corresponding to the switch. Because the slave channel is now this slider, if we move this slider to left or right, we are going to adjust the currently selected function. So now we have our master in position 1, which is aperture. If I were to move this left and right, the aperture would adjust. There is also a third possibility, and that's to set our master channel as a momentary switch. If I choose it to work as a momentary switch, so let's say the master is a momentary switch and the slave is the same slider as before, we would again get the full set of 10 positions, because the master is now a momentary switch located here, and every time I would flip this switch, the position will cycle to the next position. So we would start in position 1, click it once, move to position 2, click it again, move to position 3, and so on. It will cycle through the positions that you have set. So let's set them again in a similar manner. So once you start Intelli-G with such a setting, it will automatically go to position 1, to aperture. This slider will again control the value of the selected function, and every time you would click your momentary switch, it will jump to the next one until it reaches the end, and if you click it while it's on the last position, it will automatically go up to the first position. So these are all the options that you have available for the master channel. Now for the slave channel, we also have several options. We have shown you the case where the slave channel was the 3-position switch, and by moving up or down you would adjust the value. You've also saw that it can be a slider. And the third option is the following. Let's assume our master channel is the 3-position switch again. You can have 2 momentary switches act as slave. This is especially useful for light bridge 2 setups. And what would happen in this case is that by hitting the first momentary switch here, the one where it says high, this would adjust, so this switch here would adjust the value higher for the selected function. And if we were to switch the other one, which is this one, and move it back into the off position, so from off to on and back to off, so that it works like a virtual momentary switch, it would adjust the value lower. So to summarize what you've seen so far, the master channel can be either a multiple position switch. In this case it was a 3-position switch, but it can also be a 4, 5 or 6-position switch, doesn't matter. It can be a slider, or it can be a momentary switch. The slave channel can be a slider, can be a 3-position switch which acts as a slider, and can also be made of 2 momentary switches. Now let's move further. We have here one more available channel, because we had 4 channels mapped, and if you remember from the previous step, the calibration step, we had this 3-position switch, this slider, and 2 momentary switches. Now we have already used the 3-position switch and the 2 momentary switches, and this slider now is not being used. This is why we see it here as being available. And you can map any of the camera functions on this slider. Let's say we would want to have focus racking here, so let's say we had aperture and shutter speed and ISO on our master and slave combo, and we have this available channel here, and we could set it as the controller for our focus racking. This means that if we rotate this left or right, we will rack focus further or near. And this in fact is what you can do with any available channel. If you want to use that channel to control one function, only one function, you can do so. Now the last section in the mapping is the extra functions section. So maybe you've noticed that we did not map any recording start and stop. And if we were to have an extra channel available, we could map it in the available channels. We could map the recording start and stop to an available channel, but because we do not have one, we have the options of mapping it on events such as long presses or double clicks on the controls that are already being used in other functions. This SBUS6 here, for instance, is one of the momentary switches that we have here. The other one, the SBUS15, is this one here. So let's say we want to put recording here. We would go here and select this function, rack shutter. This means that because this is the slave channel that is responsible for the low value, when we flip this quickly, it will adjust the value of the selected function to a lower value. So you see SBUS15 is responsible for adjusting the value lower as a slave channel. But because we also mapped a long press event on the same SBUS15 channel, if we were to keep this here for more than 2 seconds and then put it back, instead of triggering the low value change on the selected function, it would trigger the start and stop of the recording or shutter. And in a similar manner, we could, let's say, map on this other momentary switch here the autofocus function. So if I quickly flip this to position switch, it would normally trigger the high value change. But if I keep it pressed for longer than 2 seconds and then release it, it will trigger the autofocus. So these are in general the principles of using the function mapping system of Intelli-G. I know it might be scary in the beginning because you have so many possibilities, but if you understand the concepts behind it, I hope you'll find them logical, and it will become easier for you to quickly configure your devices in a way that you can adjust the camera functionality as quickly as possible during your shots. Once you are satisfied with the mappings that you have configured here, all you have to do is hit the Save Mappings button. You get a warning here telling you not to forget to upload the configuration of your Intelli-G on the device itself. So right now everything that we did so far, the calibration, the camera settings and the function mappings was saved on our mobile device, but it is not uploaded yet on our Intelli-G device. And in order to do so, all you have to do is press this upload configuration button. You get a confirmation message here, we hit OK, and once the configuration was properly uploaded, you will get a confirmation here. So please make sure you upload your configuration to your device, otherwise you will have to start over again. The other options that we have here are the upload firmware, which is useful, of course, when you want to upload your firmware, a new firmware to your device. And a new feature that we have recently added is reset device, and I will show this working in a bit. So if I want to start using my Intelli-G right now. I remove the setup plug, and if I hit reset device and confirm, you see the device changed to user mode, so it exited setup mode because I removed the setup plug and I resetted it. And if I now start the Wi-Fi of my camera, Intelli-G will connect to the camera. You see the LED change to solid green. I get a notification here that we don't have an SD card, but that's not an issue. So we have this here, we mapped it as a master switch, and we can see that the LED of the Intelli-G changes as I flip the master switch. We have a momentary switch here that I'm hitting and I am adjusting the value lower, and the other one here is responsible for adjusting it higher. This is not the most optimum setup, I just did it as it came to me. And also we had, if I remember correctly, mapped racking focus here, and you see this slider here works independently from the master and slave system. And we have also mapped some long presses, so if I hit a long press on this one here, it triggers recording, but since we don't have a card, we cannot see it. And this one here will trigger autofocus.